Hey guys, welcome to today's video. In this short video, I'll be just going over the United States presidential debate, mainly about the Ukraine topic, or actually only about the Ukraine topic. I am not, I don't want to get into politics. And if we guys saw saying, oh, he's pro this, he's pro that person, no, I'm actually independent. I'm not Democrat or Republican, nor do I wish to be. Anyway, so let's talk about Ukraine. So right now, there was this clip.
Russia and Ukraine. If we had a real president, the president that knew, that was respected by Putin, he would have never invaded Ukraine. A lot of people are dead right now, much more than people know. You know, they talk about numbers. You can double those numbers, maybe triple those numbers. He did nothing to stop it. In fact, I think he encouraged Russia from going in. I'll tell you what happened. He was so bad with Afghanistan. It was such a horrible embarrassment, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, that when Putin watched that and he saw the incompetence, that he should have fired those generals, like I fired the one that you mentioned, and so he's got no love lost, but he should have fired those generals. No general got fired for the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan, where we left billions of dollars of equipment behind. We lost 13 beautiful soldiers, and 38 soldiers were obliterated. And by the way, we left people behind, too. We left American citizens behind. When Putin saw that, he said, you know what? I think we're going to go in and maybe take this was his dream. I talked to him about it, his dream. The difference is he never would have invaded Ukraine, never. Just like Israel would have never been invaded in a million years by Hamas. You know why? Because Iran was broke with me. I wouldn't let anybody do business with them. They ran out of money. They were broke. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for anything. No money for terror. That's why you had no terror at all during my administration. This place, the whole world is blowing up under him.
President Biden?
I've never heard so much malarkey in my whole life. Look, the fact of the matter is that we're in a situation where, let's take the last point first. Iran attacked American troops, caused brain damage for a number of these troops, and he did nothing about it. Recently, not when he was president. They attacked. He said they're just having headaches. That's all it is. He didn't do a thing when the attack took place, number one. Number two, we got over 100,000 Americans and others out of Afghanistan during that airlift. Number three, we found ourselves in a situation where, if you take a look at what Trump did in Ukraine, this guy told Trump, do whatever you want, do whatever you want. And that's exactly what Trump did to Putin, encourage him, do whatever you want. And he went in. And listen to what he said when he went in. He was going to take Kyiv in 5 days, remember? Because it's part of the old Soviet Union. That's what he wanted to reestablish, Kyiv. And he, in fact, didn't do it at all. He wasn't able to get it done. And they've lost thousands and thousands of troops, 500,000.
That you just saw, that is Biden and Trump talking about Ukraine. And you can see that Trump is very vague when he talks about Ukraine. He doesn't say his plans. He skips the question like most politicians do. They skip a lot of their questions. But with Ukraine, Trump skips like the whole entire question, says it'll never happen, and that's not what the viewer wants to hear. At least that's not what I wanted to hear. I super am pro-Ukraine, and even though I'm not going to vote in this year's election, I'm super pro-Ukraine. And if I was going to vote, I would want a candidate that would be good for America and also good for Ukraine. So there's that, but I do believe he can be doing something that's small, and the reason being is because he's not giving the enemy, if his enemy is Putin, and if he's trying to help Ukraine, his plan so they can put a counter. Remember back during the counteroffensive, it was, I believe, October, when Ukraine launched those attack guns, and they hit the Russian aviation and caused the worst aviation defeat at that time that Russia ever suffered ever since World War II in a single day. And that was those helicopters, attack helicopters. And that's because Russia did not know Ukraine had attack guns. Well, while we announce, hey, we'll give Ukraine attack guns, they can build up a way to counter that. I think that's the problem with a lot of the stuff, unfortunately, that Ukraine does. They a lot of times try to do PR stuff, and it gets frustrating for someone that actually wants this country to win and come out on top and stand for freedom and democracy, because like Krinky, that was PR purely, okay? This one Ukrainian general launched an counter offensive, limited obviously to the region he was, this Ukrainian commander, and they recaptured 5 kilometers of land. And that would seem like a massive push, but they started it in late April and just reported of it now. That is competence. You don't let your enemy know what you're doing. I know we all love social media, but you do not give your enemy on social media, oh, we're going here, we're going here. I think that's the problem with what Ukraine's doing in Kharkiv. They don't want the Russians to take a lot of land, so they're using a lot of soldiers. We don't know the casualties, guys. We won't for a long time, but they're using a lot of soldiers to hold that line. And it's like, bro, save men, lose land. I believe it actually goes lose land, save men. That's a quote for a reason. It's a war quote. I forget who said it, but I'm pretty sure it was somebody in the Vietnam War that was fighting the Americans. And that's a quote for a reason. That's very smart. You don't want to just hold on to things like Bakhmut because of PR. And unfortunately, that's what Ukraine is dealing with a lot lately. And that's just sad. It gives you some hope that they're sacking corrupt officers. And they just sacked this one man that, according to the Ukrainians, killed more Ukrainians than when he sent them on attack, they did Russians. So they're sacking those guys, but it's coming very slowly at a very slow pace. Now, I'm not in the shoes of any of those top-end commanders, but I do think that's a major problem. So Trump is not giving his plan. I think that's smart. Now, will it be a good plan? We'll have to wait and see if he gets elected. And there is a chance that he does get elected. Biden is giving his plan. Biden's saying keep funding Ukraine. Well, we've been funding Ukraine $200 billion, I believe. When does this money turn into like complete victory for Ukraine? I don't think that will. I think what is going to need to be is a NATO intervention with NATO troops guarding the border of Ukraine between Russia and Belarus that is not a war zone, and then freeing up all those Ukrainian troops, like 200,000+ that are guarding that in those positions. I also believe the NATO air intervention is necessary for Ukraine to win, or they just switch to guerrilla tactics, lose a lot of land, but they end up winning the war. That's what happened with the Russians in Afghanistan, the Soviet Union at the time. That's what happened with, unfortunately, the U.S. in Afghanistan. We won like all the battles, but we didn't win the war. So that's basically just what I wanted to touch on. One thing I got from that, there's a lot in this debate, but I'm not going into politics.